Good day YouTube! Baldur's Gate 3 is a game littered with multiple strange and powerful weapons. These weapons range from the common to the legendary, and in today's video we're going to talk about all 13 of these legendary gold-coloured weapons and their relative effectiveness in combat. Before we start, it is important to discern that a legendary weapon may not be the most ideal for your character or your party. A close study of the weapon's passives and actions is necessary to see if it truly does bring your combat prowess to the next level. So without further ado, let's dive in. Number 13, the Offic Hammer. This weapon is the key reward in the House of Hope arc. The Offic Hammer was created by the devil Raphael and is the only instrument that could free Orpheus from his shackles in the astral prison. It's probably legendary from a story point of view, but its utility in combat is rather limited for my party. It's a +3 enchantment weapon and grants saving throws against spells, so it makes sense for my melee character to carry it. However, Lae'zel, who is my melee character, already has many other far better options to have, options which will be mentioned further into this video. So I just armed Jaheira with this hammer, use Misty Step, teleport next to Orpheus to free him, and subsequently swap the hammer out. Number 12, Devotee's Maze. To obtain this weapon, reach level 10 with a cleric, pick Divine Intervention, arm Thy Servant, and cast it to obtain Devotee's Maze. It's quite similar to the Offic Hammer. It grants a +3 enchantment and access to the unique Healing Incense Aura spell, which provides a small amount of healing over 10 turns. Since Divine Intervention can only be used once in a single playthrough, I would suggest not wasting it on this hammer, as there are probably other better options. Number 11, the Silver Sword of the Astral Planes. I armed Lae'zel with this the moment I received it from Voss. It has an insane amount of benefits for a Githyanki character. It has +3 enchantment, deals 1 to 6 psychic damage, its Githyanki wielder gets advantage on all sorts of saving throws, and the user cannot be charmed. Now this weapon doesn't benefit the other races as much, however, so that's an important point of consideration. It is also crazy to note that you can get this weapon as early as Act 1 by casting the command drop weapon spell on Voss the first time you meet him. There's a 12% chance that your command spell will succeed, so you can just reload a save before that and just keep trying. Number 10, Contrail. I hope I got the pronunciation correct. I armed Lae'zel with this the moment I get it as well, since she's my primary fighter and I wish for her to have a legendary ranged weapon together with a legendary melee weapon. I believe this is the only legendary ranged weapon in the game. This item can be located in the Steelwatch Foundry in the lower city of Baldur's Gate. Other than its +3 enchantment, this weapon also gives Gilding Bolt, which is an interesting range option to have when Lae'zel runs out of her distracting range strikes. But most important of all, it grants Celestial Haste. Haste of any sort is super useful in BG3 combat, and this version of Haste lasts for 5 rounds and does not forfeit its users with lethargic condition, unlike the default version of the spell. Number 9, Shah's Spear of Evening. I didn't get this spear because I didn't want to kill the Night Song in Act 2. This weapon is a reward for Shadowheart embracing her duties to Lady Shah, which also meant shutting down romance possibilities with the cleric. Now there is no spear in D&D lore that would ever be worth it, so my interest level for this item dropped to 0 straight away. This weapon basically gives the user immunity to blindness and an additional spell called Shah's Darkness, which creates a fog to blind enemies. Number 8, Saloon's Spear of the Night. Now, this weapon is basically the antithesis of the Spear of Evening. You acquire this spear if you manage to save both the Night Song and Isobel and turn your back on Shah in Shadowheart's personal quests. I left Isobel to rot in my playthrough, unfortunately, so I didn't get to wield this guy. It grants its user Dark Vision as well as 2 useful spells. Moonbeam, which is a powerful ray of moonlight that damages enemy within it, and Moon Mode, which illuminates a large area, like an AoE buff which makes allies harder to hit and increasing their damage at the same time. Number 7, Makohensha Kier. Another hard one to pronounce. This is a must-have for all magic users, I feel. It can be acquired in Sorcerer's Sundries. Make sure you bring a couple of Sea Invisibility Scrolls with you, as the mechanisms to access it are hidden. The bonuses of this stuff are superb in my opinion. Cesca's Favor is unique to this stuff. It allows the wielder to gain resistance to a certain element, as well as granting them access to 2 free spells of that same element. Arcane BG3, when toggled, can allow you to cast an extra spell without using a spell slot. I normally use that to cast my most potent spell twice. Crazy stuff, is a must-have. Number 6, Bloodthirst. Now this legendary dagger is dropped once you beat Orin the Red. It reduces the roll value required to score a crit once the enemy has his back to you. Equipping this guy on the main hand would leave targets vulnerable to piercing damage, while using it in the offhand will allow you to retaliate and gain True Strike when a creature misses you with melee attack. It also adds 1 to your armor class while having a +2 enchantment. Number 5, Crimson Mischief. Crimson Mischief is also acquired from Orin's Corpse, and this weapon goes quite well together with Bloodthirst. This legendary short sword is optimal for finishing off low health victims, as it deals additional damage to enemies that's below half health. When wielded with the main hand, it dishes out 7 points of additional piercing damage, and when the wielder has advantage of attack. On the offhand, it allows characters to add a modifier to their attack. Number 4, Blood of Latender. Now this is a personal favourite of mine because of how early you can lay your hands on it. It is stacked with passives. I equipped Shadowheart with it because the passives kind of align with a cleric class. Latender's Light can blind undead within a 6 meter radius. Latender's Blessing grants the wielder a free automatic revive once per long rest, healing them and any nearby allies when their health drops to 0. This is very useful when Shadowheart goes down, and once revived, I get her to Dimension Door to safety. This maze also grants Sunbeam, which is a level 6 spell. It is an incredible offensive arsenal to have so early on in the game. Finding the Blood of Latender requires you to go through a series of puzzle solving, relic collection, and sneaking into a trap-filled secret chamber, but it is worth the hassle. Number 3, Dualist Perogative. Now to acquire this rapier, one has to complete one of the more elusive quests in the game, which is Save Venra. I completely missed it in my first playthrough. This weapon is best wielded on its own. This way, players can score critical hits when they roll a 19, and they even gain an additional reaction and bonus action to use each round. Having an extra reaction works perfectly in tandem with the Dualist Perogative's Withering Cut perk, which allows the players to deal an additional few points of necrotic damage in exchange for a reaction. Combined with Challenge to Duel, which goads enemies into attacking the wielder, inflicting bleed, the rapier is a serious force to be reckoned with. Number 2, Balduran's Giant Slayer. Balduran's Giant Slayer drops once you slay Ensure the Dragon. It was the first legendary melee weapon which I equipped Lae'zel with before dropping it eventually for the Silver Sword of Astral Planes. This was a pretty difficult decision to make because this weapon is just so powerful. The sword is very effective against giant enemies, and it also allowed the user to become a giant, which grants 27 additional HP, advantages in strength checks and saving throws, and an additional 1d6 damage per hit for 10 turns. And finally, the last legendary weapon to cover for today, Nerula, another difficult one to pronounce. This trident can be acquired after pickpocketing a genie at the Circus of the Last Days. You spin the wheel to be teleported to a jungle, and you can find this legendary weapon in a chest. Now when thrown, this trident creates a 6 meter wide blast of thunder damage, after which this weapon automatically returns to the player's hands. Pretty convenient. This is useful in clearing mobs, enemies that are clustered, and above all, it gives 3 meters of additional movement speed and jumping distance to its users. Also, it grants 4 damage immunity and complete protection against disarming attacks. So, drop in the comments which is your favorite legendary weapon among the 13 of them. And if you do prefer other weapons as well, which is not legendary, do drop a comment as well. That's all for today. Thank you for sticking by. I see you in the next video.